We begin with the spectre of Mitt Romney's first day in the White House. And as the presumed Republican nominee releases a new video featuring all the actions he would take within 10 minutes of taking office. And when I say actions as regards to Mr. Romney, I obviously mean empty bromides and veiled attacks on the current administration. And if you don't believe me, just take a look.
Day one, President Romney announces deficit reductions, ending the Obama era of big government, helping secure our kids' futures. President Romney stands up to China on trade and demands they play by the rules. President Romney begins repealing job-killing regulations.
And when he's not busy waving his magic wand, Romney's fantasy first week in office is also likely to feature a cosy chat with his friends at Fox. And this morning, we got a taste of some of the challenging pronouncements he might face, courtesy of Fox and Friends' Steve Doocy.
You said that if elected president, by the end of your first term, you would get unemployment down to 6%. People all across the country this morning, Governor, are saying 6%, that sounds pretty good.
That's tough, very tough. Romney went on to say how he would trash the Affordable Health Care Act, go big on fossil fuels and crush the deficit. And he was asked to respond to something that the president said just last night.
Governor Romney, he's saying, my 25 years in private sector gives me a special understanding of how our economy works. Well, if that's true, why is he peddling the same bad ideas that brought our economy to the brink of collapse?
Now that is a really good question. Mr. Romney?
And by the way, with regards to Bain Capital,
thank you.
They just put a report out about their record. The Bain Capital guys did. They noted they've made about 350 investments since the beginning of the firm, and of those investments, 80% of them grew their revenues.
80% of them grew their revenues. Wait, we know you can make money, Mitt. I guess that job creator myth has already fallen by the wayside. No doubt it was quite a load for Mitt to carry around. Now, speaking of myth-making, this just in from Mr. Grandiose himself, Newt Gingrich's press office. Newt will make his first campaign appearance with Mitt Romney on Tuesday at Trump Towers in Las Vegas, with Donald Trump and his hair also attending this fundraising bonanza. Good heavens, Sin City will never be the same again. Let's bring in our panel now. With me here in New York, Steve Kornacki, who's a senior writer for TheSalon.com, Democratic strategist Crystal Ball, and in Washington, Jonathan Capehart, who's an opinion writer for The Washington Post, all three of whom are MSNBC contributors. Jonathan, the new Rat Pack, an adulterer, a gambler and a teetotaler, two clowns and a candidate. How would you describe those three in Las Vegas?
Ocean's 15, I guess.
Ocean's 15.
You put those three together, and when I heard about this, I wrote back, translation circus. And your producer wrote back, translation circus, which is, I guess, that hotel is still there. But look, what I would like to see is the Q&A, if one is allowed, between the press that's there and Newt Gingrich. The questions to ask him about all the comments he made about Mitt Romney and his experience in Romney's experience at Bain Capital, and what's changed between all the harsh things he said in the early part of the campaign, especially when he was being firebombed by super PAC ads from pro-Romney super PAC ads in Florida. What happened between then and now? What makes him better than the candidate he ran against, and makes him better than the current president of the United States?
You'll have to wait a very long time to get an answer to that, John. Crystal, imagine a night out between these three. You've got one man who literally can't leave the ladies alone, even though he's an older gentleman now. You've got, Donald Trump, who loves to gamble. And Mitt Romney, he's not allowed to gamble. He's not allowed to drink. What does he do? Just drive them around from hotel to hotel?
They need a DD, right? It's not a bad idea. I mean, I'm kind of wondering, what's Herman Cain doing that night? Get him on the deal. Rick Perry, get the whole band back together.
Michelle Bachmann.
Make sure Perry's got his pain meds handy.
Exactly. But what is this about? I mean, this is ludicrous. They were firebombing, as John said, just now, Romney, and now they're all best friends?
Well, I am wondering. There's been some speculation that Donald Trump has wanted a prime speaking gig at the Republican National Convention. I'm wondering if this is a little bit of a trade-off. We'll do your big Vegas fundraiser instead of, having a prime speaking spot there. That's purely conjecture, but certainly possible.
Remember, Newt Gingrich called him a liar.
I remember well. Do you remember when Mitt came to town? A full-length documentary on Mitt's time at Bain that was way harsher than anything the president is ever going to put out.
Steve, speaking of films, and we've just talked about the Rat Pack, we're wondering whether Mitt Romney, given his new ad today, needs some kind of nickname as a great Avenger, because if you take what he says, he's going to stand down China, he's going to prevent, obviously, Iran from developing a nuclear weapon, he's going to kill the deficit, he's going to cut regulations. I mean, he's going to do everything. Is this man obsessed with something like a god complex in some way?
No, I mean, this is the effort that the Romney campaign is making here is to run the most broad, the broadest possible campaign. They
broad? This is ludicrous.
They are running on very broad promises on all of the issues that if you take a poll right now and you ask people, do you think government's too big? Well, of course. Do you think taxes are too high? Yes. Do you think unemployment's too high? Yes. You promise you're going to, I'm going to cut unemployment. I'm going to cut taxes.
Right.
I'm going to cut the deficit.
Job-killing regulations. Focus testing.
At the absolute heart of this is just basically a simple calculation that when the economy is this bad and when people are this despairing and this hopeless, they're going to look at Obama and they're going to say, we just want to get rid of him. And the whole goal for Romney is to be as inoffensive and non-specific as possible. And the whole challenge for Obama is to make him be specific.
Well, and I think that was abundantly clear in that ad that you showed. I mean, it was pure pablum, focus-tested nonsense, non-specific. And I think, too, Romney himself has said, frankly, my plan can't be scored. So there's no even pretense of having the kind of details where you could actually dig in and say this is what a Romney president
But at least he is
consistent.
Look like. At least he's consistent, Crystal, because he will not reveal his tax returns and he doesn't know what his policies are. That is consistent. John, in just a couple of hours, the president will speak in Iowa, pushing clean energy and job creation on that front, while Mitt Romney talks about exploiting fossil fuels, going big on coal. And when it comes to social policy as well, I mean, it's hardly surprising that people describe him as the candidate of Back to the Future, do they?
Well, when you get him talking about social issues, he only stays on them. He only gives them glancing mention, says that marriage should be between one man and one woman, talks about other things in the briefest possible mention, because as we've been saying for weeks now, every day that Mitt Romney is not talking about the economy and his vague plans for what he would do to jumpstart the economy if he were president is a day lost. So if he addresses social issues, God bless him, good for him, but it's not going to do him any good.
No. Crystal, Romney's big push this week is on education. You heard his speech. I mean, I think he should be charged with plagiarism because he's stolen all the ideas from George Bush and the current president. However, he visited a charter school earlier today in Philadelphia, but the city's mayor was a bit less than welcoming. Take a listen to this.
If you're going to talk about education, it'd be nice if you had an education record. It'd be nice if you had an education platform. It'd be nice if you seemed to know something about education. You can go wherever you want to go. It's the beauty of the United States of America. But the guy's got no record to run on.
To your point, Crystal, no details.
No details, and he does actually have a record to run on in Massachusetts.
He does?
That he does not want to run on.
Because he raised student fees 63% and slashed the higher education budget by 14%.
That's exactly right. And from what we do know of him signing on to the Paul Ryan plan, a plan that also cuts back on Pell Grants,
right,
and would, even if the kids get through primary school and through high school, would make it much more difficult for them to go on to college. So that's what a Romney education plan looks like. And even the things that he has laid down, you said it's plagiarism. It's based on a foundation of lies and obfuscation. He's trying to paint the president as some sort of toady for the teachers' unions, which I think if you ask the teachers' unions, they have a very different take on how this president has been. So even at that fundamental level, he always has to take it that one step too far, because if he runs on the facts and the truth, he can't win.
No. Steve, when you hear him talk about this three-pronged approach to education, he talked about better teachers, better administrators and two-parent homes. Now, I'm sure all of us would agree that that's a wonderful ideal, but is he operating in 21st century America when he describes the kind of idea that he has for how young people can grow up and develop
Yeah, no, again, it's what I was talking about before. If you ask people, what is sort of the key to education, what would you see as the ideal scenario for somebody to have a quality education in this country? Good schools, good teachers. He's just giving you basically those buzzwords, and the challenge is to just make very pleasant sounding noises and sounds about all of these issues, and it's to avoid what Jonathan was talking about before, which is basically get dragged into a situation where he has to cater to that Republican Party base that wants to hear very different things in this election that wouldn't be so pleasant sounding to the general election audience. And you play that clip from Fox News earlier. That's one of the traps for Romney in this thing. It's like if he goes on the Sean Hannity show, Sean Hannity's going to be asking him all about Reverend Wright and throwing all sorts of inflammatory stuff in his face. If he goes on Fox and Friends in the morning, Fox and Friends is going to say, well, Obama's running against capitalism, isn't he? And he's got to sit there and say yes. So he's trying to avoid that and just talk mushy about education.
But even in that mushy pablum,
right.
the saying it's founded on a two-parent home. He goes into a community where some of the parents there are single moms,
yes.
and you're essentially sort of putting out there a judgment on their household and their family. So even in that, he demonstrates a tin ear that has been another sort of common element, even as he tries to be so risk-averse and so safe.
Go on, John.
But, there's one thing. I don't know if it's so much that he has a tin ear as much as it is he's still trying to secure the Republican nomination. He's a presumptive Republican nominee, but he is still doing things to convince conservatives that he's actually one of them, that he's actually conservative. So you see him bear-hugging Newt Gingrich and Donald Trump. You see him saying these things about marriage and about two-parent households. As Crystal said, two-parent, that's so 1950s that anyway, I'm done.
And let's also point out that this is someone who does not support marriage equality.
Of course not.
So when he's talking
Right.
about two-parent households, he's talking about a specific kind of two-parent household that meets his criteria.
Well, he's talking about himself. That's what he's talking about. Steve Kornacki, Crystal Ball, and John Capehart, thanks so much for joining us.